Hey guys, before we dive into today's topic, I just want to give you a little bit of context. You're about to get a sneak peek into our agency owner mastermind. We run this mastermind every single week. We teach on a variety of topics and bring in a lot of different guest speakers that is all about starting and building a multi-million-dollar marketing agency. Now, we only post a portion of these on our YouTube channel to give you guys a little peek in. So if you're interested in joining the agency mastermind, go to thatcompany.com, fill out a form, and we'd be happy to share how you can get access. And when we meet with you, we'll not only go over how you get access to the mastermind, but how you get access to white label services where we handle pretty much everything from closing the sale to servicing the customer, everything related to project management. So the only thing that you have to worry about when building your agency is generating the leads and billing the clients. So if you're looking for one of the fastest ways to scale your agency without a lot of the headaches, check us out, and we look forward to meeting with you. Now, without further ado, let's dive into today's topic.
All right, Chris, I'm going to let you take it away.
And I'm going to take my face off the screen.
I got his bio in the email if you guys read it. He loves Mustangs. That's about all I got. So I'll let Chris go ahead and explain himself. Thanks, Chris. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, Marty. Hey, thanks for having me, everybody. I appreciate being able to be with the group here. I've been working with Ken and Marty and Mike for probably 3 years now. And what I do primarily is, what's that?
So it's been a long 3 years.
It has been a long 3 years. And what I do primarily is leadership development, leadership coaching, business coaching. I'll give you a quick background on me, and then I'm going to jump into what I'm going to talk about today. So I'm a born and raised Philly guy. If you can't tell by my accent, I'm from Philadelphia. But I've started and run a few companies in my early career. In my 30s, I got into leading turnarounds. I've led turnarounds of companies ranging from privately held $15 million a year to publicly traded corporations. And did that up until my mid 40s, did it for 13 years. And when I decided what's next in my career, what I always loved was helping other people to become better leaders. Leadership has been a passion of mine since I was a kid. Every turnaround I've done, I never wanted to be there long. I just wanted to come in, solve a problem, and prepare the next group of people to take over and work me out of a job. So I've been coaching CEOs, C-suite folks, all the way down to kind of transitioning frontline managers who are now making that leap into leading other managers, and work with companies all across the US and Canada. So today, what we're going to be talking about is winning in business and life, applying the 5 principles of high impact leadership. And I'm going to share my screen. I've got some visuals here. What I'd like to do is I want to keep it interactive. So I'm here to answer questions just as much as I am to provide information. Stop me along the way. We could stop in between the principles and chat about that principle. Or if you're just going to let me run with it, we'll get down to the end and then the floor is yours. I'm here to answer any leadership question you have, whether it's work related, life related, whatever it is. There are no boundaries tonight. And I will get started. I believe I've got screen share capabilities here. Oh, boom. Yes. Can you all see my screen? Can I get a thumbs up? Sweet. So we're going to be talking tonight about the 5 principles of high impact leadership. While this is geared towards business scenarios, all of these principles are applicable in life as well. So it doesn't matter where in life you are, anyone can be a leader, and leadership is required if you want to be able to move forward in your life. There we go. I was having a little technical difficulty earlier. So high impact leadership, it's an approach to consistently delivering exceptional results. People with this mindset are driven by the ongoing development of themselves and the people around them for constant improvement toward achieving goals and working with others to advance the greater good of their organization. High impact leaders are genuine and authentic people. They're not the kind of people that are going to sugarcoat necessarily. They're the kind of folks that if you ask them a question, they're going to give you a straight answer. High impact leaders like to challenge the status quo and also empower other people to be the best that they can be. And they have a bias towards action. I always say that high impact leaders, when there is an absence of leadership, these are the people that step in to get the job done. You can always tell a high impact leader by the way that they see a void and they step in to get it solved, whether it's themselves or helping other people. What I've realized in my 20-some year career and created this framework is that high impact leaders really use 5 principles to guide their actions in life. Those 5 principles are to communicate for clarity, simplify for effectiveness, prioritize and act, have conviction and caring, and then decentralized decision making. So we're going to jump into each of these principles. I'm going to give you an overview of all this stuff. Like Marty said, there is going to be a recording of this, but if anyone wants this deck, I'm going to send it to Marty. You just let him know and he'll blast it out to all of you people as well. So I'll make this available to Marty as soon as our meeting is done. I saw a raised hand. Someone have a question?
Oh, no, that was a mistake. But thanks, Chris.
It's just Gabriel. We usually ignore him. How you doing,
All
Gabriel?
right. So let's rock and roll here on principle 1. The first principle, and I call this the foundational principle of leadership, is to communicate for clarity. What we often don't think about is that communication is a two-way street. It's the way that we provide and receive information, right? It's all about making sure that the message that you're giving to others is being understood and being able to be acted upon. And it's also when other people are providing information to you as a leader, it's asking the right questions so that you have clarity. Ultimately, communicating needs to be where everybody is on the same page. Everyone's walking away with the same understanding of what's happening. So the main elements of communicating for clarity is consistently providing the what, why, when, where, and who of any message that you're delivering. You'll notice that I left out how, and I'll get to that later on. The next kind of element is asking the right questions, the right details, so that you can gain insight and really understand the intent of the message that's being provided to you. And then finally, and this is something that I think a lot of people, you're either naturally good at it or you've got to work to create it, but it's being able to tell stories so that you can get your message across and people can relate. So for each of these principles, I'm going to share either a concept or a tool that you're going to be able to take away and start using in your personal life, in your business life, wherever it is. You're going to get something for each one of these principles that you'll be able to start using right away. The first one for principle 1 is something that I call the 5W framework. And it's exactly what I talked about in the previous slide. It's understanding, what are we doing? What are we doing? What's the objective, the initiative, and the goal? Why are we doing it? The why is so important when you're trying to communicate information to people to get them to buy in. They need to know why they're doing certain things. So what's the desired outcome? What's the impact on the company? What are the benefits for your team members? These things can be substituted out for What's the impact on your family? What are the benefits for the people in your family, for the people in your friends group? So this stuff is so interchangeable that it can really be used in every aspect of life. When is this going to be done? When does it take place? When's the time frame for getting it done? And when are we going to measure in between to make sure that we're on track for achieving that goal? Where is it going to be done? This isn't just a physical location of we're all going to sit in a room and accomplish a certain goal, but it's also where is key information going to be stored? Where are the assets and resources that we need along the way to be able to achieve whatever it is we're working towards? And then finally, who is ultimately accountable? The one thing that people like to do because they think it's nice is to say, you know what? Me and Marty are both going to be accountable for this. Well, guess what? Only one person can be accountable. Otherwise, no one's accountable. Then you have a lot of this like, oh, I thought Marty was doing that. And Marty's like, I thought Chris was doing this. So ultimately, whenever something is being assigned or you're taking it on yourself, there's one place of accountability. And that's that. They own the outcome. They determine how to execute. That's why there's no H in this 5W framework. Because when you lay all of this out to somebody, what we're doing, why we're doing it, when we're doing it, where we're doing it. And by the way, Marty, you're the guy who's going to be accountable for getting this done. Now you figure it out. I don't want to try to sell you on how I think I would do it. I want to empower you to do it. And you're going to give me your plan. We're going to hash it out, and then I'm going to let you run with it. So the person who's assigned is the person who comes up with how it gets done. They have authority to make decisions. We're going to talk about that in principle number 5, decentralized decision making. But the 5W framework can also be used in reverse. So let's just say that one of your partners, one of your employees, one of your friends is providing you with information. You're going to just go through that mental checklist of, did they explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, when we're doing it, where it's being done, and who's accountable for it? And if they don't check those boxes in your head, this is a framework for you to go back as a leader and say, hey, time out a second. Can we talk about when this is supposed to get done, when we're going to getting started? Whatever box isn't checked, this is your opportunity to be able to get that back and forth communication in a way that everyone understands. So let me just pause real quick. Does anyone have questions about communicating for clarity before I move on to the next principle? Or is there a consensus that, hey, Chris, just rock and roll and we will do a bigger Q&A at the end? Any preferences? All right. I'm going to rock and roll. Keep your questions, and remember, nothing's out of bounds. So principle number 2, simplify for effectiveness. The one thing that you always have to keep in mind as a leader is always looking for that straight line from A to B and cutting out all the noise in between. So producing greater results requires leaders to search for the most direct and least complicated way to achieve their objectives. High impact leaders know that the ability to simplify requires a level of them detaching from situations, because when you're down in the weeds, when you're in the mud, it's so hard for you to see what the next maybe effective step might be. You're just kind of trucking along, doing things the way that you've always done them. But it's really important for a leader to be able to step back and see the whole picture and what's going on, to be able to say, hey, there's some steps in here. I don't know why we're taking those steps. Are they needed? And by doing that, you're able to identify improvements in your processes, and you're able to get things done faster and in a more streamlined way. The main elements for simplifying for effectiveness is identifying, questioning, and eliminating redundancies, taking out any unnecessary processes or procedures and outdated methodologies. There's a story about a woman cooking a Christmas ham, a newlywed, just bought her first house. She's invited the entire family over for Christmas dinner. And before she puts the ham into the oven, she cuts the two ends off of the ham and puts it in the oven, turns to her mom and says, "Mom, do you know why we cut the two ends off of the ham?" And she says, I have no idea. I've always done it that way because my mom's always done it that way. So a little later on, grandma gets to Christmas dinner. They're getting the ham out of the oven. And she says, "Grandma, do you know why we cut the ends off of the ham?" And she said, "Sure. When I was growing up, the ovens were smaller, and to get the ham into the oven, you had to cut the ends off. So if you weren't stepping back, you're missing all that ham, right? That could be some leftover sandwiches right there." So if you're not questioning why are we always doing this, what's the benefit of it, then you could get lost in the weeds and keep doing the same thing and getting, less than optimal results. And that story also goes to the second point of encouraging others to identify areas of opportunity and improvement. As a leader, you don't want to come across as the person who knows everything. You want to be the person who is saying, "Hey, Marty, you're on the front lines here. So what am I missing? What would you be doing better? How can we improve this? This is what I'm seeing, but I want your set of eyes because you're the guy who sees it every day." And then, you tie that all into being intimately familiar with what your end goals and your desires are. So when you know where you're going, you're able to get a better picture of, are we doing it the right way to get the right results? Make sense? Everyone tracking so far? Awesome.
Yep.
So the tool that I like to use to simplify is something that's been around. It was actually invented by the founder of Toyota back in the 50s. It's still used now in Toyota. It's a widespread tool, and it's called the 5 Why analysis. And the reason that this is so important is because so many times as leaders, we see something that's wrong and we say, "Okay, there's a challenge here." We ask what this challenge is. Well, it's, why is our CRM slow? Well, because it ran out of memory. Okay, we need to get more memory. But if you ask why 5 times, it will help you to get to a root level cause. And when you're able to solve problems at the root level, you're then able to put them away for good. And you're able to keep moving forward and know that that has been solved. If you solve these surface level issues without solving it at the root, you're constantly going to be coming back and solving similar problems. So the way that you work through one of these 5 why analysis is you ask why. Why is this happening? And then you have a countermeasure. Why is our CRM running out of memory? Countermeasure, because it wasn't set up properly. Why wasn't it set up properly? Well, because the engineers didn't have the right information. Why didn't they have the right information? Because it wasn't communicated to them. Why wasn't it communicated to them? Because the person who was originally setting this up, they didn't have all the instructions. Why didn't they have the instructions? So then you get to this root level of, now we have to make sure that before we launch a new product, we go forward with a new CRM, we have a full instruction set, we have an engineer who communicates that, who configures properly, et cetera, et cetera. So by asking those questions 5 times, what's our problem here? Awesome. Why did this happen? It seems redundant, but it's the best way to help you simplify and get rid of those surface level problems so that you can be more effective and don't have to address those same issues over and over again. So we're getting into the middle of the principles. Principle number 3, prioritize and act. A lot of times we have these goals and we don't always know the clear next steps to achieving them. It's a super important principle that once you've communicated out what's going on, you've gone through the exercise of simplifying how you're going to get there. Now you need to prioritize. What's the first step? What's the second step? What's the third step? So identifying and understanding the most important steps to take in order to achieve your desired outcome, and then developing the action steps for clear next steps. We always want to think about, whenever we're setting priorities, time frames. When are we going to get this done by? If you don't have end limits on getting things done, you never measure or never have an understanding of success or failure. So I always encourage people, when you're planning, always have deadlines, and then have milestones in between that you're able to measure along the way to make sure that you're following the correct path and you're taking the right actions. The main elements here for prioritizing and acting is really having a crystal clear understanding of the end goal. You need to know what your end goal is to be able to know what step number 1 is, right? If I want to lose 25 pounds, the first step that I need to work on is probably looking at my nutrition and then setting up a workout, and then on and on and on. When you're clear on the end result, the desired end result, your ability to work backwards and plan in priority order becomes that much easier. This is also super important, and I think you're probably seeing a theme here where there's a lot of interaction. High impact leaders aren't these people who are just, hey, my way or the highway. There's always going to be feedback from the team, because high impact leaders are always looking to build what's called leadership capital. And whenever I've got leadership capital with Marty, let's say, and I'm going to keep picking on Marty all day because it's just fun, right?
Right.
But if I'm constantly pushing things down Marty's throat, what are the chances that he's going to execute on whatever I want him to do to his best ability, versus me having Marty as part of the process and asking him his feedback? Hey, Marty, this is what I'm thinking here for our next steps. What do you think? He's going to say, hey, you know what? Based on what I see on the front lines, we might be missing something. We may be jumping over a step here. So he's going to buy in 10 times more when he's involved in the planning and the discussions, versus me telling him this is how we're going to do it and don't bother with your questions, just move ahead. Some people are going to be spiteful and they're going to be like, you know what? All right, I'm going to do exactly what you want me to do, even though I know 3 steps down the line, something's going to break. But hey, you want me to do it your way? I'm going to do it your way. And then finally, it's applying an iterative decision-making process. That is super important, because whenever you have plans, when I talk about planning, right, there's 2 types. There's long-term and short-term planning. Long-term is anything over a year. Short-term is a year and less. So when I'm working with companies and we say, okay, what are our goals for this year? Short-term goals. Boom. Now we're going to break them down into quarters. In the first quarter of this year, what are the things that need to be done so that we achieve our final year-end result? Once we know what needs to be done in that first quarter, now we're going to break it down into monthly and possibly even weekly. How are we checking in on this stuff? How are we measuring progress? How are we making sure that we're on the right track? What are the rumble strips on the side of the road that are going to tell us on a regular basis, hey, you're getting off track here. you need to step back in, or there's something that you didn't plan for. You need a contingency here. The worst thing you can do is wait until the end of the quarter and say, oh man, I didn't achieve that because something went off the rails and we just kept on going. If only we had been checking in on a regular basis, we would have seen that unforeseen thing 2 months back. We would have made adjustments and we would have been on track to achieve these goals. So the process of iterative decision making is all about having those checkpoints, those milestones along the way every single quarter so that you're able to check your progress and know exactly where you're going. The tool that I like to use for prioritizing and acting is something called an OODA loop. Now, the OODA loop is something that was designed or was created by an Air Force colonel during the Vietnam War. And it's something that is applied to fighter pilots. That's why it was first created. And it's something now that applies to all aspects of leadership. It can apply to all different things. So OODA stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. You'll have multiple OODA loops going on in your head depending on the situations that you're in. So the first O, observe, identify the challenge. All right, we see that there's something that we didn't plan for to reach step number 2, identify that challenge. Number 2, orient, review the information that you have. Do that 5 why analysis. All right, what are we going to do to overcome this thing that we weren't planning for? Once you get through that, D, decide. Okay, now we have to create a course of action so that we're able to continue and stay on track to achieve these goals. And now implement that course of action and act. So observe, orient, decide, and act. For every situation that you're in, you'll run these OODA loops in your head and you'll be thinking, all right, what's the challenge? What's the information that I have? How are we going to move forward? And what's the plan? Now we need to execute, we need to implement. So the OODA loop is such a fantastic tool that it was developed over 50 years ago, and it is still relevant to this day in 2023. Principle number 4 is more of the softer side of leadership. And the other principles, there are quantitative and qualitative measures that we apply to it. But conviction and caring, that's really where you're getting into values, what you stand for, setting expectations for other people. So it's believing in yourself and acting in a way that exemplifies your values and the values of your organization, and holding others to that same standard while demonstrating a sincere attention to your people's individual needs. This is where it becomes a mix of, hey, I expect you to be cruising along at 75 miles an hour every day. I'm cruising along at 75 miles an hour every day. But I noticed that you're kind of in the slow lane this week. What can I do to help you? What's going on? Have a conversation with your people. If you notice something's off, I think people are getting better at it virtually as opposed to how they were a couple of years ago when everyone made the shift from working in person to working, from their houses. I think people are getting better at reading body language and just being more open with questioning, hey, what's going on? How can I be helpful to you? That's a leader's number one job, is helping their people to achieve their goals. The main elements of conviction and caring are knowing what you stand for and exhibiting it through action. Words don't mean anything if the actions that you're seen and not seen taken aren't the same as those words. You need to practice what you preach, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Practicing servant leadership by putting your needs by putting the needs of your people ahead of your own. There's a saying that there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. And the bad leaders are the folks who eat first before, when there's pizza delivered to the office, the bad leaders go in and get in their slices before they let everyone else know that, hey, pizza showed up. The good leader is letting everyone know pizza showed up and hoping that there's a slice left for them. And then finally, it's celebrating victories of the people who achieve them, but then ultimately taking accountability for any failures. It doesn't matter if it was your failure or the failure of Marty. If Marty works for me and he failed at something, guess what? It's on me. That was my failure. But when Marty works for me and he just achieved something, that's Marty's victory, and I'm going to celebrate him. So practicing what you preach, taking those failures as your own failures, and always lifting up your team is conviction and caring. What this soft side of leadership does is it gets into this realm of building high-performing teams. The tool that I like to talk about here is what's called the Lencioni Trust Pyramid. Patrick Lencioni is like the godfather of organizational health. And this trust pyramid here is something that he created, I want to say like back in the 80s. And it's a staple to building high-performing teams. The way that it goes here is trust is the foundation for every relationship, for every team, for every organization. If you don't trust one another, then you're not able to have conflict, right? When we trust each other, then I can say, hey, Marty, you know what? I don't know if the approach that we're taking here is the right one. And Marty knows that I'm not approaching this through a personal, like, I'm just out to get you, Marty. He knows that I'm saying, hey, for the greater good of the organization, you and I are on the same page. I've got questions here. And in the same way, Marty should be able to question me and say, hey, Chris, we talked about something the other day, and I took a little time to think about it. And there are some holes that I see, and I'd like to talk about them. We're not on the same page here, but our goals are aligned. We want to reach the same things. So we're able to have healthy conflict when there's trust. When you're able to have that kind of conversation and not always having a meeting of the minds, you have some conflict, you're then able to come out of a conversation and say, okay, we put our best arguments on the table, we put our cards on the table. Maybe I don't agree with, or Marty doesn't agree with me, or I don't agree with what Marty said. I don't agree with necessarily what Marty wants to do, but that's probably the best way to go about it. So we're going to go with Marty's way. And that earns commitment. When you're able to have those conversations and understand that whatever we come away with is for the greater good of the organization, now we're able to commit. We've all been heard. Everyone said their piece. Great. Now we're going to commit to this, and we're going to roll up our sleeves, all hands on deck. Once you've got that commitment, now comes accountability. Okay, we've had the conversation where we've fleshed out our differences and our differences in ideas. We've committed to it. And now, hey, Chris, you said that you were going to get these things done. You were going to get these resources for my team to achieve this goal. I need to hold you accountable there. You made a commitment to me. You know what? You're right, Marty. I made a commitment. We had our conversation, and those resources are on their way. You can hold me accountable. And when people are truly accountable, when their feet are being held to the fire, that's when you see results. So if you don't have trust, you're never going to get the results that you want. If you're not able to have those healthy, like, bang on the table, I mean, I've been in meetings with Marty, Ken, and Mike, We're all seeing different things, different ways to achieve an end goal, and people are passionate. No, I really think it's this. All right. The best idea wins, and now we're all going to commit to it. So if you can't get there, you're never going to get the commitment. And when people are like, lazy about their commitments, like you've heard people say, you know what, I'm going to try to get there. When someone tells me they're going to try to do something, that's a weak way of telling me they're not going to do it. So when you can't get a firm commitment, then you're never going to have accountability, because there's always going to be excuse for why they tried and couldn't do it. No, let's get a commitment so that we can be held accountable, and then we're going to see some results. So this trust pyramid is so powerful, and ultimately building that trust is what everything else hinges off of in your business, in your personal life, everywhere that you touch. Trust is the foundation. And that leads me into the fifth principle, which is decentralized decision making. I talked a little earlier in principle number 2, where leaders need to be able to detach, get a 30,000 foot view of what's going on. And then once they've established that trust in their team, they're able to let certain things go. They're able to delegate to the people that are working with them and know that it's getting done. So decentralized decision-making is encouraging and empowering. Empowering is the key word here, because you as a leader are giving them leeway. You're giving them authority to make decisions. Encouraging and empowering others to take ownership and be accountable for getting their jobs done in a way that meets your goals and the objectives of the organization. Your job as a leader is to provide strategic guidance. That's why there's no H in the 5W framework. You let your people determine how, and you turn them loose and let them execute. It's your job to be looking forward, looking up and out, as opposed to down and in your business. The main elements of decentralized decision-making are involving your subordinate leaders or the people who report to you in the planning, giving them the opportunity to have input and develop the detailed action steps that they're going to take in order to achieve those goals. You're going to establish limits of authority so that your people are able to make decisions without constantly bothering you. It may be, hey, we're negotiating on a new project, and Marty, here's your budget, plus or minus $5,000. If you're getting quotes back that are more than $5,000, get me involved. But if you're getting quotes that are less than that $5,000 overage, you have the authority to be making decisions and executing. Limits of authority allow you to be able to step back and continue to provide that strategic guidance. And it lets your people know when exactly they need to get you involved and when they don't. And when they have that authority, they're empowered, right? Think about that. When you were a little kid, I know for me, I grew up in the city. So as I got older, my mom would say, okay, you can ride your bike 4 blocks away from our house in these directions. And I felt like a rock star. And then you get a little older, you know what? Now you can go 6 blocks away, 8 blocks away, but that's your limit. You can't go further than that. All right, but I've got all that space to explore as long as I know my limits. And then the final piece to this is providing candid guidance in a timely manner. And that happens in 2 ways. Number 1, you're calling out the positives. You're calling out the wins as they happen, because that helps to keep people motivated, and it helps to, ensure that everything you're recognizing as a leader. You may not have your sleeves rolled up and you're down in the weeds with your people, but when those wins happen, you have to acknowledge it. On the other side, if something negative happens, you can't let that wait. You've got to address that as well. But the way that you address it is really the key. I use something that's called feed forward. If you think about, there are two types of critiques. Feedback is stagnant and it's rear facing. You're focusing on, this is what you did wrong and you can't do that again, versus feed forward, which is dynamic and it's kind of flowing, where you say, okay, here's what went wrong. Now, what do we need to do to make sure that that doesn't happen again? These are the things that if I were in that situation, I would watch for to avoid, so that that same issue doesn't repeat itself. So the job as a leader is to provide that guidance. You never just want to call out what was wrong without giving a prescriptive way to prevent that from happening again. So think about feed forward, not feedback. Address what happened and then provide your guidance on how to avoid it from happening again. And finally, what I like to talk about here is the do's and don'ts of delegation. And you'll see that a lot of this information on the do side, we've covered in these 5 principles. Do specify the expected results. When people understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, give clear directions. Explain why you're delegating. Marty, I'm putting this in your hands because you have the experience on the front line so much more than I do, and I trust that you're going to be able to do it. Explain why you're delegating to somebody. Explain the limits of authority so that they can carry out their tasks and have confidence in what they're doing. You have confidence in your people. Once you've given those limits of authority, once you've explained why something's being delegated, let it go and let your people work. And then you have to let other people know about the delegation. So if I delegate a project to Marty, I'm going to let Mike and Ken know, hey, Marty is the guy who's going to be held accountable for this project. If you've got questions, if you need anything, he's the guy to go to. This way, that communication is open, it's transparent, and everybody knows who to talk to if something happens. On the other column, the don't side is, don't just delegate trivial tasks. I know that I've said several times that as leaders, you're not the people that are rolling up your sleeves, you're not down in the weeds, but it's also a leader's job to set an example. So you are going to pick up trash that you see on the floor in the office. You are going to, take the time to do some of those trivial things because they're not beneath you. You can't come across as a leader of saying, I've reached a certain level, so therefore I shouldn't be doing certain things. You still want to pitch in. You want to be seen as the kind of person that others want to emulate, and they're going to start doing some of those same trivial actions as well. You don't just hand away all of your trivial stuff because you don't want to do it. You can't expect others to do the task exactly how you would do it. If you want it done exactly how you would do it, then don't delegate it. Do it yourself. But as a leader and as a person, we only have so much time in a day. That's why you choose the best person to delegate it to, explain the 5 whys to them, or the 5 W's, I'm sorry, and then let them go. They're going to do it differently than you would do it. And that's perfectly fine as long as the end result is achieved. Don't insert yourself without reason. This is when Marty might say to me, all right, Chris, you've given me what I need to do, and these are the steps that I'm taking. And I say, you know what? I think some of those steps are messed up. So you should do it this way. Like, why'd you delegate it to me if you're going to just continue stepping in and trying to tell me how to do it? And that leads to the micromanagement. Once you've given someone their limits of authority, trust them that they're going to come get you when they're hitting the rumble strips, when they're reaching the limits of their authority. You have to trust that they're going to come and get you, and you shouldn't be breathing down their neck every single day looking for status updates and whatnot. So no one likes being micromanaged. So try to get that out of your mode of operating. And then finally, don't take credit for the results of the tasks that you've delegated. Very similar to what I said earlier. Celebrate other people's wins, give those wins to those people, and take the accountability for any failures. But never take accountability for what you've delegated to someone else and they have achieved. So, do's and don'ts of delegation. And basically, this is what it looks like in action. The principles of high impact leadership, they don't flow just from communicate for clarity to simplify for effectiveness, prioritize and act, conviction and caring, decentralized decision making. This is going in every direction. So, and I think I just kind of touched on that when I was talking about delegating. When you'll come back to the conviction and caring part, when you're celebrating the victories that you've delegated and someone has achieved, and when you're taking accountability for something that wasn't achieved, that's you showing that conviction and caring. So these principles all work interconnected within each other, and they're being applied all the time in every situation that you're in. Personal, business, whatever, life. Leadership in life. That's how you're going to win. So that's it for me. And now I want to open it up. I know we're getting a little close. Maybe I was a little longer winded than I thought, Marty, but
That was great.
you know, I'm not going to rush off the call. So I said I would be here for answering questions, and any questions, I'll stop my share so that I can see faces and everyone can see more faces, and fire away. What do you got? How do you want to lead and win and grow in life?
Before we get all the questions, I just want to say that this isn't just Chris is our leadership coach for our executive team and myself. I don't know why. No, I'm just kidding. But Chris is our leadership coach, and he helps us a lot with our business. And something he mentioned to me today that really struck a chord with me, because I asked him personally, I says, I don't understand how to best utilize you. And so he explained to me some of the things he does with other people in our leadership team. Leadership's not just business, it's personal. You have business stress, you have life stress, you have family stress, you have kid stress, a lot of kid stress if he has kids. And he helps me a lot with all of that, as he does with all the rest of the members of our leadership team, because it's all connected. Stress is still stress. And so being a leadership at home is the same as being a leadership of your family, being a leader in your personal life, leader with your friends, leader with your business. It's all interconnected. Being a good leader and impacts so much more of your life. And that's something I really took away from. I had my session this morning with Chris. And so then having this presentation, Chris, was really validated. And I mean, I'm glad everybody else got some, hopefully everybody else got some out of this, but I really got a lot out of it too. It just revalidated everything that you've been doing with us. And so I thank you for that. But yeah, it's, guys, ask away. He's great with advice. So if you have any kind of questions whatsoever, even if it's not business related, even, okay. Floor is open.
Fire away.
I don't have something to ask just yet. And hi, Chris, my name's Dominique. So I don't have anything to ask just yet off the top of my head, but I do to say. And it's kind of like what you just said, Marty, actually. So for example, aside from my branding agency, I also run my family's real estate investing company. And in our team meeting this week, because we have it every Tuesday morning, I actually switched up the agenda to actually include, how are you doing? Right? And so, and that's a formal part of our meeting now. And I'm going to be doing the same. I did it as a test, and I'm going to be doing the same in my branding with my team. And I can tell that it switched the tone of the meeting to like, okay, we're just here for business, to no, we're in this together. Like, we're friends, we're family, like that thing. And it was never outside of the business. I just never formalized it as a part of our day our day-to-day meetings. I would always ask, like, when the meeting was over, then I would say, how's everything going? Or I might ask, like, in the beginning, how's everything going? But it was always separate from the business that needed to be done as opposed to a part of it. And so I am starting to see that, like, the tone of the meeting change. So I really do like that. And it's right. Leadership is not just about business, it's also personal. And that's a strong point to make, because so many of us often are taught to separate the two, and then wonder why people are high stressed or high strung, or can't figure out why someone's doing something wrong, or whatever the case may be. So I think that's a really valid point to make, and I love that you brought that up. That reminded me about what we did this week.
You're absolutely right. First and foremost, as leaders, we're people, right? And we need to be seen as people. One of the things that I do, and I love that you made that part of your agenda. One of the things that I do with leadership teams is I always encourage a specific agenda for weekly meetings. And the top of that agenda is a check-in with everybody to share 2 pieces of good news, one personal, one professional. By sharing good news at the top of a meeting, it sets the whole tone for a positive follow-up. So I love that you're incorporating that into your meetings. Very important.
That's it. I don't have another question off the top of my head, but I am going to think of something.
Well, you're thinking, Jessica, go ahead. Sorry.
You'll have my contact information as well. So if you think of something, let me know. You can get in touch with me.
Thanks so much.
Sure thing.
Maybe not a direct question as well. Coming into the business of digital marketing for the first time, I've previously run my own businesses as far as personal training and such, and I also a surface warfare officer in the Navy for the last 8 years. So I've been in leadership roles as far as what traditional leadership would look like as far as a hierarchical type thing. Something that I've always brought into my leadership is kind of a coaching aspect. I've been coaching people in sports. I've been coaching people in athletics for a very, very long time. And having that same approach, even in my business office right now, I'm working as a program admin. So I do all of the admin work with a team of 4 people for an entire program that does military defense contracting. And so we're extremely busy all the time, is having a more coachable team. And that's something that I've tried to keep implementing as far as developing businesses around me, is having that coaching and coachability. The one thing I will say, that the military was a wonderful, wonderful place. It was just they had a certain demographic of saying it's lonely at the top. You don't have the support, or you feel jaded from the rest of the people that you're leading a lot of times. So that's something that I learned kind of the hard way whenever I got to the position that I was at. And having someone to just bounce an idea off of, good or bad, would have been extremely helpful.
Yeah, it's when you lead in such a way where you're inviting that feedback from the people that report to you, it builds that relationship. Relationships are really what leadership is about, right? And the stronger your relationship, the stronger the trust, and the better the commitment, and so on and so forth. Goes right back to that trust pyramid. But that's the other thing. Leaders need to be vulnerable. And for so long, people were taught, if you're a leader, you're supposed to know everything. You're supposed to carry yourself in a specific way. But dude, I say the leaders need to be vulnerable, because the people that work for you have awesome ideas. And if you're not open to taking them, then you're doing yourself and the organization a disservice. So having that coaching aspect, and that's the other thing, leaders need to want their people to improve and to grow. Like that's such a huge part of leadership, is helping others to operate at their full potential. And if you're not coaching them and you're not allowing them to participate, then they're not going to reach that. But totally agree with you, Jesse.
Anybody else? No need to be shy.
Yeah, no need to be shy. I'm going to be leading myself onto the jiu-jitsu mats in about an hour. So you got some time before I go choke some people.
Or get choked out.
Right.
What belts are you in now in jiu-jitsu?
I'm a blue belt.
Very nice.
And so my middle son also trains with me. He's about to be 15. So it's great for he and I to be able to get on the mat. I wish when I was a teenager, I had the opportunity to choke my dad with permission. So great way for us to build that relationship.
Dominique, do you have something more to add?
Yeah, I actually do have a question. I haven't directly faced it, but I always wondered how, if I were in this position, what would I do? If okay, so everyone has to have their me time. And what really triggered the question is when you talked about jujitsu. So everyone needs their me time, everyone has their thing. And maybe it doesn't happen. Anyway, what do you do if you have an employee or a team member they're requesting their rightful time off, but there's still this work or this urgent thing that has to get done, and they're the ones to do it, or maybe they have a key part in it reaching its completion? What do you do? Because you can't penalize them, right, for having a life, for requesting time off, or whatever the case may be. What do you do in that case? Is it just a matter of you just have to suck it up until that person gets back and just redelegate to other people? Or is it just a matter of hiring more people and that's the stuck part? Like how do you deal with that situation?
There are a couple ways to deal with that, but I think that the first would be having a conversation with that person and letting them know how important they are to the process and what a critical role they play in getting this done, and being honest that yes, you're entitled to take this time off, and I'm not going to say that you can't, but is there any way that it could be postponed? Is there any way that you're able to get this done, get it done up to a certain point before it's able to be handed off to someone else? And this could also come back to the planning process. When you're planning on a goal or a new project and someone gives their commitment, then that's something that you can fall back on and say, well, Marty, do you remember 30 days ago when we started this planning process and you raised your hand to be accountable, to take the lead on this? How does that look to everyone else if you want to take a week off when we're at this critical juncture? So I always like to, number one, reinforce the importance of someone on the team and to the project if there's a conflict like that. And then ask them, okay, if you have to, right? Things happen and people, maybe there's a sick family member and someone has to leave for a week, middle of the project, right? It happens. Who do you trust that I could delegate this to? how can you help that person get up to speed? So this way they're still engaged, but they still have some responsibility. And maybe they realize, you know what? I really don't need to be away for a week, and I can stick it out. Maybe I just need to take a half day off, whatever. But it's the trust, it's the relationship, and being able to say to them very plainly, look, there was a commitment that was made, and you're the key here. So if you're not able to do it, help me figure out how it can get done. And in cases like that, some people may be hesitant to let go, and they're like, oh, you're right. I am a critical player here. So I want that credit, right? People are driven by getting credit and getting that pat on the back. You know what? You make a good point. All right, I'm going to stick it out and I'm going to get this done. And then afterwards, I'll take vacation, whatever. But I always try to include the human element there.
Yeah, no, that was really helpful. Thank you for that.
You got it.
Chris, Jesse asked about sharing this. I hope you don't mind, but I said yes. It was. He can go ahead and share this with the rest of his team and everybody else. If you look in the chat, we will upload this into our YouTube channel so everybody can take advantage of this. Lots of great information, a lot of information. So it would be worth it to go back to take a look and to even as a refresher. You might forget things here in a week or
question,
a month.
Mark.
Yeah.
So Chris, how you deal with like leaders that they're not that open to suggestions, but I mean, where like the answer, but they wouldn't just take it, they don't like that suggestion or your ideas, and they acting like, oh, you don't know shit or things like that,
Yep.
but you do know the strategies and stuff. Yeah.
So you're talking about you're leading up, right? Are you talking about dealing with someone that you report to, or
Right. Yeah. Correct.
got it? So in cases of
Well, and basically, let's say like we are like on the same page, like we all are in the same page now, like you're not, like over me or anything like that. We're just trying to get a project done, together, and yeah, you're just not open to suggestion and new ideas. But we trying to get that done. We trying to get that project done.
well, in a case like that, that's where you want to lay out. You want to make sure that you're both on the same page of what that end result looks like. Hey, as far as I know, this is what we're supposed to achieve. Is that the same thing that you believe? If yes, okay. So based on my experience, or have we talked about all of the options available to us in order to achieve that shared end result? What you want to do is just get the communication going. Sometimes you're going to allow some wins for that other person. Like, you know what? Yeah, you make a good point. In your mind, you're conceding to a point that someone else makes, and you're building leadership capital for later
Correct.
down the road. So there's a give and take. As long as you're both clear on achieving the same end goal, if 90% of their approach is going to get you there, sometimes it's better for the relationship and the building of trust to, all right, we're going to go with your plan here.
But if things are not moving forward, you let them do all that things, you build like literature capital and let them do it their way, but things are not moving, forward. And they still like want to do it their own, their unique way or their own way,
Okay. So that's when you would start to ask some objective questions, right?
Okay.
So, okay, you wanted to take 3 steps in this direction, but we realize that there's a waterfall there. What's going to happen if we take a 4th step? You backtrack and you you call out. I mean, that's what part of having healthy conflict is.
Yeah, yeah, that's the part of the conflict incurring. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's asking questions about the things that aren't working and trying to get them to think about it in a different way. And pointing out these are the things that are not working. These are the things that we've tried, and this is the result of those.
Right.
Does it really make sense for us to keep trying the same thing again and expecting a different result? Sometimes you have to be stern as a leader.
Right.
I mean,
yeah,
you can't always roll over, but
yeah, definitely.
And Gabriel, you may mention where your idea was just dismissed. In those situations, it's okay to ask why. Hey, so what about my idea did you not like? And they might go, well, point A, point B, point C. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. They had more information than you did. And so now it makes sense of why they said no, because you didn't have all the information to begin with.
Okay.
So asking why would help get you on the same page. And that would also let your direct supervisor know that you're interested, you're concerned, and that you are trying to figure out a way to come up to that solution. And also that you're not fully on board with their solution, that there might be another way. And so it's gonna help you navigate.
Yeah, it's just after like having those kind of conversations, still, that person still, want to do it their way. But you have shown, lay down some other options, and stuff like that for those leaders. But it's just sometimes you have to you have to be bold and stuff. I know. But I do understand that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's a great comes into play.
That's a great great strategies right there to handle that kind of situation. I appreciate that.
And you know what? Keep that 5W framework in mind.
Yeah.
Go through those, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? When is it being done? Where and by who? Who's ultimately accountable?
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the problems, that there's no one ultimately accountable. So that's the thing there. That's the that's the whole thing right there. I think.
You need accountability, otherwise no one's accountable.
Yeah, so we will have to talk about that. Yeah, definitely appreciate that. Awesome.
You got it.
All right, guys. Well, thank you guys very much. I appreciate all your patience and understanding and willingness to join in on all these meetings. We are here for you to help you guys grow. We don't succeed unless you guys succeed. So this is what we're here for. If you have any other questions of Chris, I did include him into the email that I sent out for everybody. So if you do have questions of Chris, go ahead and flood him with emails. He loves it. Now, he's a great guy. As you can tell, I joke around with him. He jokes around with me. He's very easy to talk to, and he'll help you out.
And let me also say, Marty, if you don't mind, I'll give a selfless plug for my YouTube channel. It's at Straight Talking Leadership. So check me out there. I post multiple content every week, from shorts up to long form, 5 to 7 minutes. There's a whole library of leadership related content on that page, and it just continues to grow. So there are nuggets out there that you could probably pull from.
And what is it again? Straight Arrow?
At Straight Talking Leadership.
There you go. Straight Talking Leadership.
I don't sugarcoat. I just bring it straight.
Right?
Awesome.
We have a bunch of searching people here, so you got to throw in those keywords.
Right.
All right, guys. Thank you guys, everybody, so much. Have a great weekend. If I don't see you guys
thank
tomorrow.
you, Chris. Thank you, Marty. Appreciate
All
that.
right. Thanks for having me,
great.
everybody. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Thanks.
Have a great night.
Guys.
All right.
Bye.
See ya.